Chair, is the mic on, or do I need to? Okay, good. Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I'm Ken Price, and let me introduce Claire Smith and 𝐿𝐿𝐿 Demerkin. We represent Danforth Families for Safe Communities. We're based in Toronto. We experienced terror and tragedy from gun violence on a horrific night on July 22nd, 2018. It was a handgun that came to a retailer in one part of the country that was stolen and then used in Toronto to kill a girl, a teenager, and 13 others that night. One of those injured was Ali, and another was my daughter, Samantha, and the daughter of Claire and I. It is through this lens of that experience therefore, and through our own subsequent findings as a grassroots group that emerged from that night, that we have joined others in calling for a need for action to reduce the growing gun violence problem. We're not here to be critical of all gun owners or of all gun ownership. Our group is made up of citizens with various levels of experience and use of firearms. But since we were brought into this issue due to the tragedy, we are troubled that gun violence and homicides by gun have continued to grow. And we also agree that no one measure will be sufficient to combat this issue. We support Bill C-21 because it is a wide-reaching bill, and it has many aspects. It's not just about a freeze on handguns or a buyback of assault rifles. It has a number of items that we support. But other groups are going to talk about other measures and have given testimony in that regard. So we are going to focus on what has been called the freeze on handguns and that aspect of it, and the efforts to reduce the widely held private supply of handguns that we believe are contributing to crime in this country. It gives us no pleasure to make that statement. It gives us no pleasure to stand here and say that the domestic source of legally imported and licensed guns contributes to a significant portion of guns used in homicides and violence. But as evidence, of course, we have our own experience, and our own experience where this was true. And then through a survey of accredited news sources, we've compiled a list of incidents where handguns were stolen, diverted, their straw purchases occurred, or licensed gun owners themselves were the ones carrying out the violence. So we combine this anecdotal and incidental information with our reading of Statistics Canada data. And for those guns, according to Statistics Canada reporting, for those guns that were successfully traced and used in a homicide, the number of guns traced to Canada were 2.5 times greater than the guns traced to the United States. Now we realize that this number is likely to be challenged, and it is different that number other people are socializing. StatsCan also reports that the gun format that's primarily used in crime is the handgun. So it's not about all guns, and we're not taking issue with the vast majority of gun owners who own rifles and shotguns. We are taking issue with the fact that handguns themselves are the problem. Now, of course, we also conclude that there's an issue with guns coming across the border. We absolutely acknowledge, we know that. We've talked to lots of groups that will acknowledge that as well. But we're here to say that there's not one problem to solve where supply is concerned. There's two problems to solve. And therefore, the freeze is necessary, unfortunately. And in that regard, we have 3 comments that we'd like to make about what has been proposed. The first, and all of these lead to some clarification and perhaps tightening of some of the exemptions, which I think are well-meaning but could lead to an undermining of the goal of freezing and reducing the number of handguns in the country. First is the exemption for elite sport shooters. We think the wording needs to be clarified and tightened so that it is more clear that it's really the pistols being used in those competitions and not a general license for handgun ownership. And we also ask that the program that is being supported is that which exists today. Related to this point, we're already seeing that other sports shooting organizations are coming forward and saying, well, what about us? You know, IPSC is an example of that. And our concern is that those other organizations have very broad definition with respect to how many and what kinds of handguns they can use. They have an open category, so virtually any handgun could qualify. So we're concerned again that it would undermine the objective of the bill, which is to freeze and reduce the handgun supply in Canada. Secondly, we'd like to see a loophole closed that existed in our case where the person who had stolen a gun was able to buy magazines, particularly, without having the need to present that they had an RPAL or a PAL and an ability to buy that. So we would like to see that wherever a license is required to buy a gun or ammunition, that so too the magazine is included in that. And third, there have been suggestions made that perhaps the gun ranges themselves could get the business exemption, We understand that idea, although we're very concerned. We have seen evidence that gun ranges can be a target of theft, and therefore we're opposed to this ownership model until or if regulations are agreed to that would ensure the safety of all Canadians, should that go forward. We shouldn't back into that as an idea. It should be an idea that we construct